Hello, everyone, and welcome to Transforming Today Show. My name is Rebecca Weintraub, and I am your host. And today I am here with Shane Vitkovich, my special guest, and we are going to be talking about his transformation and the fact that he's a certified breathwork coach and he helps people process trauma. So, Shane, welcome. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. So just so you viewers know, okay, so Shane and I went to middle school and high school together. I had like the biggest crush on Shane when I was in middle school. And so I don't know if I ever told you this, but I was completely a stalker. I was like, this was sixth or seventh grade. And Shane lived maybe like a mile and a half from me, but I walked 5 miles, like 2.5 miles down to this place called Dandelions, which was like a, ice cream shop and flower shop, and then back just so I could see if maybe he was outside.
You did tell me that. I did know that.
So anyway, we go back a long way, and I really wanted to have you on because your story of transformation is just absolutely incredible, and people need to hear it. And so I'd love for you to share with us to start off, give us a sense of where everything started and walk us through your transformation.
Um, I just turned 39 on Saturday, April 6th. So I was born April 6th, 1980, and excuse me, I have a cold. But when I was born, my biological father decided that he just didn't want any interest. So he left. My mother met who I call my father. Um, they got married around the time, I think, October of 1980. So I was about 6 months old, and he legally adopted me. But this is information I found on later on. So the basis of how it started and how I found things out and how my life pieced together went like this. So from the time I was born till the time I was 6, uh, through doing work now and remembering things and things coming up and trauma work and stuff. I remember as a kid, my parents would fight a lot. So what I considered my mom and my dad, who I thought had me, would fight a lot. And I remember my mom would get in the car and she would leave, and I would sit in the window and just kind of like be like, "Is she ever coming back?" My dad would be like, "Yeah, she'll be back. She'll be back," and she'd pull up, and like that sense of relief, right, where it's like, "Oh, thank God she's back," right? Like that was my protector. Um, so when I was about 5, I'd say maybe just turned 5, 5.5. I'm not really too sure, but my mother got leukemia. So a lot of my time was spent going to school, kindergarten or first grade, and then going to the Leahy Clinic. So every day my mother was in the hospital. So every day I would go to the hospital after school. That was my life. When I was 6, she finally got released from the hospital. We thought she did chemotherapy. She did it all, lost her hair, had a wig, and she came home. And she was home for, I don't know how long, but it wasn't very long. And she contracted like a basic cold, and it was enough to kill her. So my mom died of leukemia September 3rd of 1986. I was 6 years old. And I remember I was at my aunt's house, and my dad came over, and I don't remember what else he told me, but I remember he told me that my mother had passed away, and it didn't make sense to me. So a good bit of my life was spent how it was from when I was a kid, of looking in the window, like, when's she gonna be back? Like I was too young to process kind of what death was, and I think as a result of that, I've had a lot of death and lost a lot of people in my life. And for a long time, it's still that kind of thing where I don't believe it, or like at some point they'll be back, or it's a joke, or, just kidding. So yeah, so at 6, it was just, as far as I know now, it's just me and my dad. I had 4 older sisters, and they were already all moved out and greatly old, much older than me. So it was just me and my dad. And I grew up in a household that was very confusing to me. My dad made breakfast for me. He made dinner. You sat at the dinner table. You ate dinner. You didn't get up till it was done. I mean, my dad was very strict, old school Boston Roman Catholic, and if he told me I had to be home at a certain time, it meant that time, not 3 minutes prior. It meant 3 minutes earlier. So he was very loving. You know, he would always say, "I love you," but when he got upset, it was rage. It was a lot of rage, and it was scary. And you know, I suffered a lot of mental abuse and physical abuse, and I had to develop, a sense of security to feel safe. So you know, if it was you're crying, well, you know, I'll give you something to cry about, kind of thing. My room had a lock on the outside of the door. I would escape through the windows, so he'd put screws like this down through the windows so that I couldn't get through the windows, and I'd break the windows, and he'd put plexiglass. So my room became like, you know, somewhat of a cell, but my toys and stuff were in there. So it was like, you know, again, this thing of confusion of like, you know, I'm being punished, but I'm not. He's angry, but he loves me. It was very confusing, but I remember just not really ever feeling safe. And I resorted to my friends. So my friends were my life. I didn't care about my family. I always just felt different. I just felt like, what am I missing? What's off here? You know, it was like everyone had a secret. No one wanted to tell me what was going on. And I felt that. So I always felt like I was crazy. Like, why do I feel crazy? And turns out it's because I'm an empath. I'm not crazy, but you know, we learn that later on in life. So my child again, a lot of my childhood was spent just with my friends. I was into sports. I played hockey. I was really good at hockey, and that was my life. So anything hockey, whether it was pond hockey on the ice, playing it on a video game, playing floor hockey, anything related to hockey was my escape, and I could use my anger and you know violent tendencies, and it was okay. It was allowed because you know it's hockey. So I was like, this is fantastic. Uh, then you know I started to get in trouble in school. I always hated school. I hated authority. I hated teachers. I didn't like it. It's not that I couldn't do the schoolwork. I just didn't want to do it. So school was more of a social hour for me. And even that wasn't fun because, you know, I was awkward and it was different. Again, I just felt different. Always just wanted to fit in and not have people know how sensitive I was, or, you know, in Boston too, it's like, you know, you got to develop this sense of being tough and, you know, what's your identity going to be? So I remember I started getting into fights around middle school, probably about sixth, seventh grade. And I won a few times and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. Like now, you know, people won't make fun of me. People won't, you know, I remember as a kid, I never wanted to feel less than. I never wanted to be made fun of. The slurs that people would say, as far as, you know, if you play tennis, you're this. If you play soccer, you're this. So you didn't do that. You didn't want to do things. You weren't in the band. You didn't do choir. You didn't do things like that because, you know, bullying and whatever else it was. So I would say around, I mean, I started smoking cigarettes when I was about 10 years old. I would steal them from my sister. And I started getting into drugs and drinking probably around 12 or 13. And by the time I was 15 was the first time. Well, let me back up. When I was 14, I went through my dad's room and I found a notebook that my mom had kept while she was in the hospital. And in this notebook was when I found out all these things. I found out, you know, this is who your biological father is, blah, 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 all this stuff. And I was like, I was so confused. I was like, wait, what? And then it started to make sense to me. Like, here's the secret. Here's what nobody wanted me to know. Here's why I felt different and never felt a part of. And somehow he found out that I knew, and I was in therapy. He was in therapy. And we had this like group session of both therapists and him and I. And I'll never forget the day that he explained to me, like, I didn't want to tell you because I was afraid that you would want to leave and go find him and not want to stay with me. And I thought that was the craziest thing in the world. I was like, I would never do that. But, and at the time, I don't know that I understood that, but obviously I do now. And, I know my mom was real worried about having to leave me with him because she knew about his anger. She knew about, that he was a loving guy, but also very angry. And she was worried, but what was she going to do? So, and my dad loved my mother very much. He really did. And, but he would say things like, why her, not me? And, she wouldn't be here. She wouldn't put up with you like I do, and blah, blah, blah. So things around 14, 15 is when things really started to get out of control. I was just completely out of control. And I got admitted to a psychiatric unit for the first time. A girlfriend had broke up with me. I lost a job and, said I was suicidal and all this stuff. So I got put in a psychiatric ward. I went back and forth. I went about 2 or 3 times. And by the last time I got out, in my head, I convinced myself that I had just got out of state prison. And I was just like, you know what, like I'm going to be even more rebellious than I ever have. And I dropped out of school officially at 16. Well, I got expelled from high school for threatening a teacher. And then I went to a few alternative schools, same thing, got expelled from all of those for doing, things that the average kid isn't doing at high school. And from 17 to 20 was just a lot of, what I considered normal drug use. It was still nothing too crazy. It was a lot of drinking and smoking weed, and ecstasy was a big thing at the time. So I was going to clubs and doing ecstasy. And I moved out when I was 16. I left my house and just like slept on older friends that I had places or whatever, and I'd sleep on the couch or whatever it was. And let's see. I attempted to go to community college around 19. I got my GED because I had a girlfriend that was like, hey, man, you have to get your GED. And I was like, okay. That was Daisy. I don't know if you remember her, but so I got my GED at 19. I ended up going to community college for a little bit, but again, just smoking weed was my priority, and hanging out and just being with my friends and doing what I did. When I was 20, I got my first DUI. I was chasing some kid on a highway that I had an altercation with earlier in the day. I crashed my car, and state police arrested me, and I got charged with reckless driving, DUI, all this stuff. So what does one do in that situation? You enlist in the United States Army. So that was my out, and I had nothing else going on. So I figured, why not? So I enlisted into the military around August of 2000. I joined the Massachusetts Army National Guard. I enlisted in the infantry because, again, my core beliefs and what I thought it meant to be male and alpha and all this stuff. You got to go in the infantry, and I want the best of the best. Put me on the front, and that was that. So then I shipped off to boot camp. January of 2001, I went to Fort Benning, Georgia, for 16 weeks of infantry school. I turned 21 in boot camp. Did some more training, and then 9/11 happened. While I was waiting to deploy to Bosnia, I was at Fort Dix, New Jersey, and 9/11 happened. So 8 days later, I was in Bosnia. So 8 days after 9/11, I landed overseas, and our rules of engagement changed. And, while I was there, it's, I got to experience what I enlisted for, and it was different. It was, I don't really know how to explain it. I didn't have to shoot anyone. I didn't kill anyone. I didn't see anyone get killed. But I saw a lot of things and did a lot of things that were what was required for while I was there. But then you come home and wonder if it was the right thing to do, or maybe I should go back there because that's all I'm good at, So when I came home, I did a 9-month tour. I came home in April of 2002. I had just turned 22 when I got home. And now what? I came home and now what? So I tried to take the Mass State Troopers exam. I tried to take the police exam, firefighter, all that stuff. And I didn't do well on the test. So that was out. And then, again, just a lot of sitting around. What am I going to do? And I started to get drinking really became my thing. I was a big binge drinker where it wasn't, all the time, but it was Thursday, Friday, Saturday, at least maybe a Wednesday, maybe a Monday also. Just working, basic jobs, carpentry jobs, labor jobs, just to make money and then go out and drink. And that led to a lot of trouble, fighting, police. And then I would say, when I was 23, so this was 2003 was when OxyContin started to come onto the scene. And I had some friends that were like, hey, try this. It's like doing, perks or whatever. I said, yeah, why not? No one said to me, hey, this is like doing synthetic heroin. Give this a try, right? And I tried it, and that was it. I was sold. I found my mother again, right? I found the womb. I found the safety net that I needed. I found everything that I wanted, which was to not feel anything and not care about life at all. And so I developed a habit for OxyContin, and once I didn't know that if you didn't take them, you would withdraw and experience dope sickness. So when that started to happen, I didn't know what was going on. So then that got really out of control. It got really expensive, and now I'm dealing drugs or robbing drug dealers, and I'm just doing this stuff that is nuts. And my father's watching this happen, and our relationship was, again, on and off. It was spotty, and I held on to a lot of anger and a lot of resentment, towards him, towards my mother, towards God, towards everyone, the whole world. It was me against the world. And then at 23, I knew a kid that was doing heroin. So I just figured, let's just up the ante. So I called him, and by 23, I was a full-blown IV heroin user, with no goals, no ambition. And I just didn't care. It was okay. I felt like, you owed me something because I went to the military. You owed me something because I didn't have a mother. Or you owed me something because of X, Y, Z, and all of it. So from 23 till, not at any rate, from 23 to 26, I struggled in and out of rehabs and sober livings, and it never made sense to me. I just figured I thought you went somewhere. I didn't know anything about recovery. I didn't know anything about trauma. I just thought you went somewhere, you got detoxed off the stuff, and you gave it your best shot next time, right? And every time I would swear, there's no way I would ever do this again. There's no way I would ever do this again. The 10th time, the 15th time, going like, why, people going, if you love me, you wouldn't do this. Why don't you just stop? And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm gonna, like, I get it, right? Why wouldn't I? And just the same pattern over and over and over. When I was 26, I finally, I did get sober, and I was in a sober living, and I was going to AA meetings. And this is where I started to learn a little bit about recovery, and still really not so much trauma, a little bit, but mainly recovery and the 12 steps, and kind of learning some stuff where I never, from that point on, could never use or something and not know that I was doing something that was going to affect my life drastically. Like, now I knew I had the information, and it didn't make it the same, but it still didn't stop me. When I was 26, I got into, I was like doing security at nightclubs and stuff like that. I went out drinking one night and got blackout drunk, got into a fight. I ended up stabbing a kid with a pocket knife 3 times in the leg. I got arrested and I got charged with, first charge was attempted murder. And luckily we got it knocked down to, I mean, the kid didn't die, he's alive. And I got it knocked down to aggravated assault and battery with a deadly weapon. And I got a 5-year sentence in state prison. So from 26 to 31, so from 2006 to 2011, I was in state prison in Massachusetts. And again, I went to prison and I could have just gone and done my time and put my head down and got out of there. But nope. I wanted to make a name and be known. So I got all the tattoos. If I didn't have the sweatshirt on, I got all the tattoos. Fights in and out of segregation, maximum security. I was in Walpole. I was in Shirley Max, Sousa Baranowski Correctional Center. In my last year, I finally started to settle down and they let me go to a medium. And I ended up wrapping up my sentence for a medium. But while I was there, I was still getting high the whole time, still getting into trouble. And all this did was just make me more angry and feel, you know, like more of a failure. Like this, I mean, this is it. Now I'm a felon, a state convict. I have a W number, and that's it. I mean, what can I hope for now? And you know, I'll never forget the feeling of when I walked out of state prison and how good, like the air smelled different, you know. And I got out and I went to a program at the VA, at the Veterans Affairs Hospital, VAMC out in Bedford, Massachusetts. And I did well there for a while. I lied and told everyone I had 5 years sober because I wanted to feel like, you know, that sense of self-worth that gave me some self-confidence to feel like, hey, at least I'm somebody. But due to the fact that I was lying, I was being fraudulent, I wasn't being authentic, it ate at me, just like all the other shame and guilt and all the other stuff that had already ate at me in the first place. So I ended up relapsing. I did 5 years and I was on probation for 5 years. I stayed out for 2 years. And then after 2 years, I started to use again, and my probation officer put a warrant out for my arrest, and I went back for violating my terms of probation. And I went back and I did a year in county jail, and I got out in September or October of 2014, and I stayed on parole until May 11th, 2015. So from May 11th, 2015, I haven't been arrested. I've been pulled over a few times for speeding on my motorcycle in California. But other than that, there's been no crime, no trouble. When I see the police, I have no reason to worry these days, which is a great relief. So at 35, I was at one of my lows. I was getting high really bad to the point where I was going to die. And I had a friend, a girl who was my friend, and she was living with me to make sure I didn't die. And at this time, my dad had moved to North Carolina to live with my sister because he was aging and he couldn't stay on his own in Massachusetts. So I had no family. I really had no one around in Boston, and my life was just going right into the gutter. So this girl started calling, and most treatment places I wasn't allowed at because I'd been thrown out. The police have been called. I mean, I was a nuisance. I was the kid that was like, nope. So I went from the kid that don't invite him to parties because someone's going to get hurt to don't let him in this facility because someone's going to get hurt or he's going to do something crazy. So, and I, looked at it like nobody gives me a chance. Nobody gives me a chance. And it was just, nobody was willing to, I don't see myself as this big figure. I'm a scared 6-year-old inside, a 225-pound, bald, tattooed man that, when I start yelling gets a little bit scary. And to me, I'm like, what are you guys so scared of? So she started calling around to Florida and California and put me on the phone with somebody from California. Well, it turns out this kid she puts on the phone with me was at the sober living that I was living at when I got arrested in Boston for the aggravated assault and battery. And I was like, oh my God, what's up, man? And he's like, dude, he was like, I have 2 years sober. I live in California now. I can get you out here. I can get you into this program. And I was like, that'd be great. And this was November of 2015. And he was like, you're going to have to give me a month. And I was like, oh man, I don't even know if I can make that, man. So I did. I endured it. And in December of 2015, I came out to California to go to treatment. And it was then that I started to, I would say it was about 40 days. I hadn't slept. I was really out of my mind. I was acting out, lashing out, breaking things, swearing at staff. I mean, again, just my usual MO at home. But the difference was this time is as long as I didn't put, like, someone sat down with me and was like, look, man, we tolerate a lot of stuff with you. If you put your hands on anyone, you're out of here immediately. So, I mean, that was a good and a bad thing, because it kind of gave me like this okay to have temper tantrums and break stuff. But the fact that they were willing to work with me and saw potential, like they knew that I wanted to be sober, they knew that I wanted to change my life. I just didn't know how. And I was very angry and emotional, right? So it was there that I started to meet with this therapist that I had. And I mean, I still talk to this guy to this day, because he's a lot like me, wherein, a lot of times it's, what are your credentials? What's your certification? What do you got? What do you got this? And it's like, you know what? I maybe didn't go to school for 8 years to get a PhD in psychology, but I lived a life, and I've done, 5 years in a different kind of school. And, I don't think one's better than the other. I think they both can be useful. But again, this was a guy that didn't have all those certifications. He just had life experience. And he was the first one that explained, maybe not even the first, but the first that I became willing to listen to and finally heard. Not to get too AA, but there's a story in the big book that talks about this guy saying, 6 people had told me the same thing. And for whatever reason, the 6th guy, it just made sense. So that was this guy. I mean, you could say I have a few Eskimos, but you could say that he was one of them. He was the one that taught me about having such black and white thinking. He's like, Shane, with you, it either is or it isn't. There's no in between. Either I hate you or I love you or nothing, And once I started to think about things, why, I became very racist. I became very homophobic. I mean, you name it. It was just like, if you weren't from where I was from, if you didn't look like I looked, if you didn't talk like, we have nothing in common, right? So I was my belief system, I was very limited. And because of that, it was very exhausting. So my life was very exhausting, because I had all this stuff to carry and this person to try to be all the time, every day. So I did some work with him, and, we started to zone in on my mother and such. And while I was at this place, I met this girl named Samantha, who is, again, another one of my Eskimos and one of my best friends to this day. And she was a breathwork facilitator. And I was like, yeah, okay. I don't do yoga. I don't hug trees. I don't want to hug anybody. Thanks, but no thanks. And she never forced it. She was like, okay, well, I'm here, right? I'm here. And she did private sessions and she did groups. A group, no way. I was never doing that. Like, you want me to get vulnerable and do all that stuff? Not happening. Fortunately, I was out there with at least another 10, 15 kids from Boston who had been out there a little bit longer than me. And one of them that I became really close with was like, hey man, you should really try breath work. You'll dig it. So now it's coming from a reliable source, someone that I trust, that, that I know is like me. And I'm like, got to a point where I was just like, something's got to give, man, because I'm either going to jump off the roof here and do a swan dive into the driveway, or I'm just going to go overdose, because I'm done. Like, something's wrong with my brain, and it's been a cool 35 years. Goodbye. So I met with her like the following day or whatever, and I said, hey, I'd like to try breath work. And she said, okay, excellent. And she, the way I see things now is a lot how she saw them then, where she knew once I would come around that it was going to be magical. And it was my first session in there. I don't really think ever in my life I've cried like that. Maybe as a kid, prior to my mom dying, but from the age of 6 to 35, I don't think I'd ever cried like that in my life. Like to the point where it made me, I would have rather had to stand in there naked because I felt so uncomfortable. I thought for sure she was taping me on Snapchat and laughing at me because like, right? Because that's how my mind thinks is you're going to get made fun of. So anyways, I was able to process so much stuff and I'm thinking, I got done. Like, what just happened? What did you just do to me? Like no one's ever been able to do that in my life. I mean, therapy for my entire life where it was like, yeah, whatever guy. Yeah, whatever guy. And, it took me a little bit to process like my first session. And she told me, she was like, look, just take it easy, eat something. And the next couple of days might be a little bit tough for you, but hang in there. Mind you, I'm still detoxing off of heroin and benzos. So I continued to see her for individual sessions. And as time went on, it got a little bit easier. Some different stuff came up. And I started to get this sense of relief, and coupled with still seeing this guy for therapy, getting a sponsor, doing the steps, and my life started to change. Things started to get great. And around 4 months, there was a guy who had trained her, and he said to me, "Hey, I think you should take the healer training and become certified in breathwork." And I was like, "Are you sure, dude?" And he's like, "I think you could really help a lot of people." And I was like, okay. So I went out to, I did healer training 1 locally, and then healer training 2 and 3 was out in New Mexico, and I was going by myself. So for the first time, I had this little 4-man crew of who I worked with, and it was comfortable, my little bubble. And this was the first time I was kind of expanding out into, I don't even know anyone that's going to be here. So I went to this thing. I felt super out of place. I mean, this was hippiest of the yogi, of the chakras, of the talk, what to wear, what crystals meant what. And I was like, dude, I'm just some kid from outside Boston that always thought he was tough. That's trying not to shoot heroin. And what? I have nothing in common with these people, right? Because again, I was judging. I wasn't leading with intuition. I was leading with assumption. And I had still self-esteem and low self-worth stuff to work on. So turns out my first day there's probably 30 people, and we're sitting around the circle, and we're sitting with the main guy who facilitated it. I was trained under David Elliott. And as people started to go around and talk, I was like, right? One was an alcoholic, one lost a kid, one's husband was this, one was that. And I was like, huh. And you wouldn't think that by, looking at them, right? Because in my mind, I had a certain look, this is what it looked like. This is how it affected you. It's no way you can smile. How can you be happy? When people would say my life is great, I used to get mad. What? No, that's not great. We're tolerating this. And then it got to me. And I got vulnerable, and I told my story, and I talked about my mom, and I talked about where I'd been and where I was. I never experienced more love from other human beings ever in my entire life until I went to this. I mean, a few here and there, but as a group conscious, I mean, they all held me in the air, and it was again, I was like, oh my God, if my friends ever knew about this, what am I doing? This is so odd. But I would put that to the side because I was like, I don't care. If this is what it's going to take for me to stay alive and be okay with myself, then I don't care. I just can't keep caring about what everyone else thinks about me or what I'm doing or how I look. So I got through 2 and 3. I made some amazing friendships out there. I learned a lot. And then I finished the healer training in June of, I want to say June of 2016 is when I fully got my certification out in, I think Palm Springs was where we did 4. And then from there, I continued to work under my mentor and watch and learn and watch. just like, you know, and it was what I did as a kid. It was what I did my whole life, is I would just sit back and watch. And I was very shy. I was very closed off. Like, I went from being a very introverted to now being an extrovert, I would imagine. But I was very introverted, and I would always just look and wonder and think and analyze and look and what's going on in people's eyes and people's movements. So now it was like I had this sixth sense, or this ability that I had all along, you know, an empath, or, you know, I'm not a medium. I don't see spirits. What I know is that everything I've learned and everything that I've trained in, and once I was able to kind of free myself and be me and be okay, was I started to see people differently. And it sounds crazy to me, but I tell people all the time, like, you know, when I see you, it doesn't even matter what you tell me. Just know that I already see a little bit of what's happening, but that's not my job. My job is for you to kind of let it come up, and then we go from there. But we'll get to that. So anyways, I got certified. I continued to train. And then I had a falling out with my mentor. And then that was very catastrophic for me, because I made this guy my higher power. I made him my sponsor. I made him my therapist. I made him my dad. This guy he was it. And now he wasn't in my life. And I didn't know what to do. And I got into my first motorcycle accident out here. I had also at the time, I had just got a year sober. I got hit on my motorcycle in around 15, 16 months. So two close friends that I had out here both relapsed and died. And I mean, that's a whole nother episode. I mean, the amount of friends that I have lost to the disease of alcohol and addiction is catastrophic, especially coming from Massachusetts with the opioid epidemic. More friends than I care to think about aren't here anymore, and it's sad. And I know their families, and I know it's tough. I had suffered great loss. I lost this man in my life. I wasn't working a solid program. I was still facilitating breath work, but I used that as, this is what's going to save me. As long as I'm helping other people, I'll be okay. But I wasn't doing anything to help me. So I was still effective at breath work, and I was still showing up and still helping people, but I'm taking on all these loads, and I'm showing up for everyone, showing up for this one, never showing up for me. I wasn't doing breath work on my own. I didn't have a sponsor. I wasn't going to meetings. I wasn't doing anything to take care of me. And around 15, 16 months, I had shoulder surgery from that first accident, came home on morphine, in so much pain that I couldn't sleep. I was crying. I mean, this was some of the worst pain I had suffered in my life. And, as a result of that, as a result of not doing anything, as a result of feeling bad for myself and blah, 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 I started to use again. I got sober again. I had about 60 days this time. I got hit on my motorcycle again, fractured my back, broke my ribs. I'm off and running again because of pain pills, and I couldn't sleep. My ribs were broken, and it was horrible. And they say when you relapse, it's one of two things. You're either not convinced you're a drug addict or an alcoholic, or you just say F it. I say F it every time. I am not confused if I am a drug addict or an alcoholic. I just go, I can't handle it. I can't handle life. I can't handle my emotions. I can't handle the pain. I'll give it another try when the pain goes away, right? Sadly, the pain never was going away, whether it was physical, mental, emotional, it was always there. So at this point, I'd done a lot of work, right? I've done a lot of work with trauma. I'd done a lot of work around my mom, my dad. I'd called people. I made an amends. I found my biological dad. I reached out to him, which was crazy to me. I mean, this was a man that I plotted murder on for a long time. And I reached out to him. And, it turns out he's not a great person, but it's okay. I accept that, and I accept who he is. And that's just that, but I had to do what I had to do for me so that poison wasn't killing me. I did a lot of acceptance work around my mom. And, a big thing that I learned about was to stop being selfish and to think about other people and how other people feel instead of always, what about me and how I feel? Because that's what it always was. So once I started to go, well, wait, what about the fact that this poor woman was dying and had to leave her only child and knew that? But that was never my point of view. It was always selfish. How could you leave me? How could you do this to me? So I had done work, and now I keep relapsing, and I'm like, again, in my mind, it didn't make sense. I do breath work. I do this. I did all this work. How can I still resort to doing drugs? Well, because that's my default setting, because that's still what makes me comfortable. So I struggled for about a year of in and out, 2 more motorcycle accidents. I mean, I'm lucky that I can walk. I'm lucky that I'm alive. California is not a safe place to ride motorcycles. So at any rate, let's see. I don't think anything other than that drastic happened out here. So August 23rd of 2018 of this year is my current sober date. So God willing, within this month, I'll have 8 months sober. The 22nd, I checked into a rehab facility. Excuse me. My throat's dry. So I checked into a rehab facility on the 22nd. So the 23rd is my sober date, and I went through this treatment center, and I went to their sober living, and I got rid of my house. I mean, I lost everything, my job, everything, and I started to question myself. What am I doing? Is breath work a real job? This isn't even real. What am I gonna do? Should I go back to Boston? Should I go to California? What am I gonna do? I lost everything. I ruined everything. Like, nothing's ever gonna be the same. So what I learned this time in recovery was I kept trying to be like, how do I get back to where I was? Instead of how do I move forward and have a new experience? I always wanted how do I get back? Now, here's the issue is when I first did breath work, my mentor, I tried to be him. I thought I wasn't allowed to get angry anymore. I couldn't swear. I couldn't tell people I was sad. I had to always be happy and peace on earth, and breath work saved my life and everything's great. And for me, that's not real life. What I found out is that I can still teach breath work. I can still be effective, but I can still show up and tell my clients, hey man, I'm having an off day. I'm kind of sad because my friend just overdosed and died. I'm kind of angry because the drivers are horrible out here and it takes everything in my being to be civil, And that's okay. That doesn't mean that I'm not empathetic. That doesn't mean that I'm a bad person. It means that I'm experiencing emotions. I'm experiencing pain, hurt, loss, sadness, happiness, and I have to express that. So I learned that this time around, and I got a great sponsor who is the complete opposite of me. I mean, this guy is so zen, vegan, like has never been in a fight in his life. He's been sober 21 years, and he took me on, and like there'd be times that I'd call him and he just goes like, okay. And he's like, here's what I want you to do. But I listened to him and I respected what he said. And some days were tough. I mean, my first 70 to 90 days was tough, man. Like I, again, got to that place of like, I'm an insane person. There's something wrong with my brain. The way I think is crazy. The way I react is crazy. And it's never going to be different, man. It's just not like put me in prison for life or just kill me because I can't do this. Like I just can't. I thought I had it once and that was my one shot and I quit, man. I just quit. And he was like, dude, just hang in there. Just hang in there. I promise you it'll get better. And I did. There were days that I had to just hold on to the bed and just go, I don't know why I'm so crazy, but I'll hang in there. Just don't get high. Just don't use. And I stayed in this sober living and around 5 months, about 4 actually. So my old job, so I teach breath work at a drug and alcohol rehabilitation at an intense outpatient, which is called an IOP, which is clients that have more than 30 days, 30 to 9 months or what have you, and they live in a sober living and they come here for the day and they do groups. And breath work happened to be one of the groups. Then they opened a detox, and the detox is fresh off the street, you know, taking detox medication. So it's detox residential. So they're there from 0 to 30 days, and then they start going to the outpatient. So I have a lot of the same clients, and I get to see them when they first come in, and then I get to see their transformation in X, Y, and Z. So at about 4 months, she asked me, because I had left on good terms. I told them, hey, things have gone south. I can't show up anymore, because I didn't want to come there. Because again, the whole thing of being fraudulent. How am I going to come in and explain to you how I live my life and what I do, and I'm lying? I can't. That eats at me. So for me, being authentic that's what makes me good at what I do in any scenario. So she said, do you think you could come and do a breathwork group once a week? And I was like, I can handle that. I can do a group a week. Sure. So I did it, and I started to get my footing back and confidence, and go like, I'm good at what I do. You know, why is that so wrong? Why is that? It's not cocky. I'm not trying to inflate my ego, but I'm good at this. Like, this is what I do. And I had people that are like, man, you got to help people. Like, that's your calling. You got to help people. And again, I still had to be like, well, what about me? Like, I have to make sure I'm helping me. So I continue to do that and do the steps. I started to get into only men's groups. So I go to 3 men's stag Alcoholic Anonymous meetings a week. I have great friends out here, great support. I have a sponsor. I work the steps. And I go to neurofeedback now, which has been helpful as well with PTSD and trauma. So neurofeedback, it has been great, and I'm probably 20 to 30 sessions on that. I highly recommend that. It was offered to me for free through a veterans program. And again, I've become to a point of being willing where if someone says that says, hey, try this out. I mean, look I've been to life coach things. I've been to other classes to audit, and my superpower, I go, I'm not buying this. Like, this is cool. And if people get something out of it, cool, but it's not for me. I went to a transformation workshop. I spent a lot of money on it. I left the second day. I was just like, I get it. This is cool, but I've seen this show. What's next, man? Challenge me. So with neurofeedback, I was like, here's something I don't know about. And this is about the brain, and you mean this and that. And I just do this. Okay. And I tried it, and it was great. So some things are for people, some things are not. There's so many breathwork facilitators in California. I'm friends with some of them not. Some I believe in, some I don't. Some are doing it for the money. Some are doing it because they really care and want to help people. And I'm not for everyone. I'm very straightforward. I swear a lot. I've been, I haven't this, which is great. And, but that's me. Like, I bring me to the table, and sometimes that's too much, but at least you're going to get the truth. And at least and it's not, I don't come off like that I'm tough. I maybe come off stern, but at the same time, let's cry too. I'm down. And that's my primary. So now I work in this place. Like I said, I'm coming up on 8 months. I work in this facility 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. Not only do I do breath work, I teach, I facilitate rather. I don't like to say that I teach people. I facilitate, and I'm a vessel, and I help, and I facilitate vulnerability group. So I do vulnerability group, and I do breath work. And vulnerability group is more or less just like, what's really going on? If you don't want to breathe and do it, then let's kind of talk about what's going on. And when I talk to people and I learn these things, and, I remember when I didn't know, right? When it's like, when someone goes to me like, no, I mean, I had an all right life. Like, my dad was an alcoholic. I was molested when I was 7, but I mean, like, I played t-ball. Life was great. And I'm like, huh? And they honestly don't know that that's traumatic. And so when I get to kind of explain some things, or like, hey, when this happened, like, that meant an imprint on your brain, and that gave you this belief system and this armor, and so on and so forth. So that's what I do Monday through Friday. I facilitate breathwork and vulnerability groups Monday through Friday. And then I also have private clients that I either see individually that may have their own space and host their own groups, and I'll come and facilitate that. So breathwork and vulnerability groups and that stuff is my main focus. Through that, and through the halls, and through AA, and the connections I've made, and the guys I've made, I mean, I have clients now that I only saw on television, and it wasn't a real life thing to me that I would ever see them in person, you know. And now I live in Hollywood and I live in California. I mean, it's like, you know, seeing a Ferrari or a Lamborghini or somebody that paparazzi's chasing is just a normal thing. And I think what helps is that I don't come from a place that that's a thing. I come from a place, you know, Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, but I've never seen them, but that's our claim to fame. So when I was out here and I started to see people, I'd just be like, oh, look, there's so-and-so from that movie. And that's it, you know, and just keep it moving. I have fanboyed over one or two, I won't lie, but for the most part, they're just people to me. So I think they respect that and can see that, you know, and I've met a lot of people in AA who are famous, and some of them I could do without, but some of them are genuine human beings and literally go to these meetings because they just want, they suffer from alcoholism and they're there to help other people. And I appreciate that. And I've become friends with a lot of them. So at any rate, through breathwork, through AA, it's opened a lot of doors and opportunities for me. So around November, someone said to me, hey, you should take an acting class. And I was like, why not? Right? Why not? I'll do it for fun because it gives me something to do. Why not? So I did that. Oh, mind you, in the meantime, around 6 months, I got my own apartment. I have a 1-bedroom that I pay for. I have my dog that I'm responsible for. I have a car with a car payment, fully insured, a valid license. And I have a life. Like I have a life, you know, I'm busy. I have things to do. I have pots and pans. I have, you know, things that, I mean, you know, to the average person is just like, you know, yeah. But to me, that's not a thing. You know what I mean? That's not a thing. You know, I have to call people sometimes. And like when I first got in, like, hey, like, how do I, you know, what am I supposed to have in the bathroom? Like, oh yeah, I got to get a plunger. Like that's a thing, right? Oh, and the brush to clean it. Okay, we do that. Do I just get the curtain? What's the other thing that goes on the other side? Like I didn't have a shower liner. What, you crazy? First of all, mine was like this dirty door. But anytime if I had a curtain, if you were lucky, right? It was just other than that, you put towels on the floor. Like, you know, I'm not like slumming it hard, but I just had basic caveman military, like, it's enough to survive. It's a roof. It's stable. I'm not going to get wet. I'm not cold. I'm not too hot. Perfect. Good night. Is there a candy bar I can eat? Right. So I have these things because I've been able to stay sober, because I do what I'm supposed to do. I'm responsible. I show up. I'm on time, and I live my life. So I start this acting class and it's going well. And then someone from the program who was like a special guest that came through saw me there and was like, hey man, I didn't know you act. And I'm like, neither did I, you know, I'm just having fun. And he was like, well, you're really good. You have like that natural talent. And this was someone that I was like, really? You know, whereas, you know, most people, right, when someone goes like, well, you know, Rebecca, you look really beautiful today. You're such a smart, you know, wonderful young lady, right? And for a long time, you're like a snail and you're like, okay, right? Like, and you're like, and the first thing, so when someone goes like, hey, you're really good at this, you want to go, yeah, I mean, I'm all right. I'm not, you know, you want to downplay it because that's what I'm so used to my whole life is you're stupid, you're nothing, you're a failure, or what I told myself. And that's the one thing that therapist taught me was like, from now, and he was British, and he'd go, from now on, mate, when someone gives you a compliment, I just want you to say thank you. All right, that's it. So now if someone says something and you just go, thank, like how hard that even is in the beginning, you're like, thank you, right? And that's it. Like, that's, huh?
How are you like?
Thank you. So now it's like, thank you. I appreciate that, right? Like I appreciate your kind words instead of like, wait, do you want to tell me what a failure I am or what a horrible person I am? Because that's like, oh yeah, no, that's me, one, right? So anyways, he says to me, my brother is having is doing a Hollywood play. You should come audition for it. And I went, okay. Never been in a school play, never done anything like that in my life. But yeah, why not? And in my head, I'm like, here we go. I got to wear tights. I'm going to be singing, right? That's what a play is to me in my head. And I'm like, oh my God, this is nuts. But whatever, right? Because I'm always working on things to be uncomfortable, to be vulnerable, because it only gives me more strength and makes me a better person overall. So I auditioned for the play. 4 men, 2 female lead. I get a call back, hey, we want you to be in the play. We really want to cast you. And I'm like, cool, let's roll. they were willing to work around my schedule. So the entire month of March went 9 to 3, work, rehearsal, work, after hours, going and meeting at coffee shops. I mean, when I saw this thing and saw how many lines and blocking and on stage and off stage, no cut, live in front of an audience of about 60 people, I was like, this is crazy. How am I ever going to remember this and still do work, still do the steps, still go to meetings, still show up for life? I think I signed on for too much. And literally about a day, so we went live the weekend of my birthday. So April 7th was preview night, April 6th, 5th rather, and April 6th was opening night. April 4th was a Thursday. We did the first full run through, and it was like butter. It was like a machine. It was like everything had been worth it. All the stress, the aggravation, the fun, the laughs, whatever it was, it worked. And I felt good about it. And we had opening night, April 5th, which was a Friday. And that feeling I told you about when I walked out of state prison, I got to experience a feeling that drugs or nothing has ever been able to give me that first night. The feeling of accomplishment, the feeling of acceptance and playing a vulnerable character, because my character is like kind of this dopey, like a confused cop kind of thing, where like I'm just meant to be like big and a little bit dumb. But
of course it's a cop.
Yeah, of course, right? The irony. I'm a Homeland Security agent, actually. It's called the North Plan, which was based on Oliver North's plan, I think, with conflict with Iran or something, if, martial law had ensued or whatever. And a guy has state secrets, and me and my partner head down to some place in Missouri, and we're trying to get these secrets from him, and all kinds of shenanigans ensue while we're there. And but when I had that first night, when the director came to me, because the first way I took this character was, all right, I'm a cop and I'm going to be tough, right? Like, listen, if there's any tough roles, if there's any prison, criminal, cop, anything like that, nailed it, right? But he's like, he's like, so when you come out, your presence alone is enough. So when you do all this stuff, it's overkill. He said, what if you try to be vulnerable? What if you are kind of shy? And I was like, thinking to myself, like, man, I don't want to do that. Why? Because it's uncomfortable. Let me do what's comfortable. Let me take the road always traveled, not the road less traveled. So I said, fine, right? And because I remain teachable and I want to learn this stuff. So I did. And it felt so much better. And I had so much more fun with it when I stopped caring about how I looked and what people thought and blah, 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 right? Because I'm not perfect, and that still does happen, just not as much. So I did that. And the first night we had it, and you got to understand that when you do this, like, I know who the other characters are, even though I'm supposed to pretend I haven't seen them. I've been working with them for a month. Like, of course I know who that is, but I come on stage and pretend I don't. And we never had anyone watching it except the director, who'd seen it a bazillion times and watched us run through it. So you don't really know where people are going to laugh or not. So then there's this thing of learning to play the crowd, because now I laugh and I can't just, people laugh, I can't just continue on my line. I have to wait, like a Friends sitcom. So that was new to me. So now I'm delivering these lines thinking it's no big deal, and people are laughing, or like I just make a facial expression and people are laughing, and I'm like, wow, this is really something, right? And anyways, we're 4 shows deep. We did Friday and Saturday last week. Of course, I got a cold Wednesday this week, and it's only been getting worse. Thank God tonight's our last show until next weekend. But just did Friday, just did Saturday, did tonight. And every night, someone that I don't know has come up to me and said, dude, you make the show. And I have probably the least amount of lines. What I have is a lot of stage presence with no lines. Yeah. So in the beginning, it was like, what do I do with my hands? I was like, what do I do? And when I realized this thing with acting is listening, right? Because it's like when you have a conversation with someone and they can't wait to cut you off so they can get their version out, right? Mm-hmm. So I learned to listen to people a little bit different, instead of like, okay, that's cool what you said. Again, selfishly, it's about what I have to say, because let's hear what I have to say. So when you stop and listen, instead of when do I deliver the line, when you listen, the line just comes to you. So I learned how to sit there and be involved in the conversation, just like I would if you and somewhere else were having a conversation right now and I was involved. I wouldn't not know what to do with my hands. I would hang out like this and listen, right? So why don't I apply the same thing? So that's what I do. And, I've had these people like, dude, you're really something's gonna come of this for you. Like, people come out here for this and like aspire to do this. And you just have this natural ability and like your expressions and I want to know more about your character and all this stuff. And when I, in my head, go, damn, I could have done better tonight. Or I wish I did better. I messed this line up, or did I look dumb there, And when someone tells me stuff like that, and it's like, that's the difference between here and here, right? Because it's about how I feel in here. And if I lead from here, everything's fine. If I get caught in here where there's still cobwebs and bad neighborhoods and stuff like that, I'm going to get tripped up, and it affects how my thinking is, affects my performance. So literally, I see people doing all kinds of crazy stuff before they go on stage. And I just sit there and go, just breathe, just breathe. Like, what breathing has taught me is uncomparable to anything in my life. So that's where I'm at. That's pretty much right.
Can I say I'm proud of you? Because I know you. Can I say that?
Yes. Thank you.
Dude, like I've been sitting here just taking in everything that you're saying with every emotion, you've drawn me in. And what I can say is, not only is your transformation absolutely incredible, and I'm so proud of you for it's almost like the opposite of fighting, once you, it's like you fought for so long, and then like the opposite, I guess, of fighting is what you've mentioned a number of times: vulnerability.
Surrender. Like,
yeah, surrender, acceptance, vulnerability. What I love about all this, Shane, is like, not only is your transformation absolutely incredible, like really, just take like the one thing that I think was missing in a lot of your life, just me listening to your story, is self-celebration. And that's actually something that I had to learn only in the last few years too. I was like you when you were, whether it was looking at your acting or whatever you're doing, it's like, like looking at that 1% that just felt uncomfortable or didn't seem right. And, that 99% is just so beautiful. And you've really stepped into that. And I love that you're starting to celebrate yourself. And I love when the therapist told you, just say thank you. That's a lesson I had to learn as well. And I teach people that, I guess that's the wrong word for it, but I share that with people. And I talk to my clients about it. But what I really love about your story and how poetic it was at the end was around what I call intuition. I know you use the term empath a lot, and empathy, I believe, is a part of intuition. I'm an intuition coach, and I help people strengthen their intuition. And my definition of intuition is not just a gut feeling, and it's not getting as spiritual as you can get. It's really a balance of our mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual dimensions in an optimal state, and us finding the balance between them, keeping them healthy and keeping them balanced. And part of being an intuit is understanding life in a different way. And when you described when you were little about thinking that you were weird or something was off because you understood the world differently from everybody else, but no one was explaining to you what the heck you were interpreting or experiencing, it's kind of funny because I was going through the exact same thing. And here we were going to school together, doing our thing together, and both of us were feeling completely like probably similarly the same thing. And when you start understanding that intuitive ability, and then you start, it's not just about overflowing to others. And that's what I learned, because you had mentioned in your story that at one point you just kept, like when you got sober, you just kept giving and giving and giving. And the problem with that is that we will never be filled up if we just keep letting it pour over. But the ironic part is that when you focus on filling yourself up, by default, it just spills over.
That's what I had to realize, was that there was nothing I even had to give. I just had to show up with what I have. And exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
Because complete in the system, I never gave it even time to fill back up. It was just like, here it is, here it is. You know?
Yeah, like literally running on empty, and whenever you got a little gas or you filled up a little bit, it's like you burn that so quick, you're on empty again. But yeah, I get that.
Who would have told me in sixth grade that at 39, you're what, 39 also, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
If you would have told,
Nine.
if you would have told sixth grade, so that was sixth grade was about 90,
Two.
92. So 92, and here we are, 2019, right? And you do what you do and I do what I do, and this is where we're at. Like, no way, So it's like, why does that happen? I mean, call it God, call it, I don't, you can call it whatever you want, call it Christmas, it doesn't matter to me. But you can't deny that things aren't, destined to be. Or why were we in each other's lives? I mean, and we went through friends to kind of friends to not friends to you're weird to I'm weird to, back to friends years later, to not friends to, you know, you checking on me to me not responding to, people stay in your life, or things come around full circle, and it has to be a reason. I don't know what. I don't think anyone knows the answer to that. But if you don't feel it or feel into some of these things, that's how you have missed opportunities, I think.
Yeah, and I do think it was our connection of this power of intuition. Like, I believe that everybody has intuition, but when you have trauma at such a young age, something happens where, like, something opens, or something happens where you're forced to rely on your intuition for maybe survival or guidance or whatever it might be. And when you're forced, you cannot go back. You may not be healthy enough to have that intuitive flow coming in the whole time and your whole life, but it's there. And it's prominent in your life. And I think because we were on the same frequency right from the start, it doesn't surprise me that we're here right now. And you and I both do very similar things. In fact, my specialty is to help people release resentments. And a lot of times people come to me because they've had trauma or some kind of PTSD. And the work that I do is I help them release resentments. And you are doing very similar work through the breath work. So it's so poetic and beautiful that you and I have found our own way. It's not like we're using the same medium to help people, but we've taken so much time to fill ourselves up so that we can help other people from a stable place and a healthy place. And we're dedicating our lives to hoping that we cause transformation in others, and we're a part of that transformation for them. And that's so incredible. So I want to talk about what it's like when you're working with someone. What, you have to play your part as the facilitator, of course. You've got to kind of stand that ground. But you're also human, and you also have to be intuitively in tune with the person that you're working with. So you're on the journey with them, but yet holding them and supporting them the whole time. So talk about what it's like to sort of be playing all those roles, and then emotionally what's going on as you're coordinating all of this.
So that's funny you asked that, because in the beginning, before I was certified and I was still like learning, I've led a few men's retreats, and I've walked on hot coals. I mean, I've done a lot of cool stuff. And the first weekend retreat I went on, I was under the impression it was my job. Like, give me your trauma. I'm strive taking on. There's not, what worse could I have taken on? I'll take on yours too. Give it to me. And I did that for a weekend. And by the time I got home, I told my mentor at the time, I was like, man, I don't think I can do this. Like, there's no way I can take all that trauma on. He was like, wait, what? And he was like, it's not your job to take it on. It's your job to hold space and be, a vessel of sorts for these people, So you need to have this boundary, and you need to learn how to stay grounded. So then and then I think to myself, well, how am I supposed to do that? I'm human. Am I supposed to not like just be cold hearted? And he's like, no, you just need to learn and keep going and learn how to be empathetic, but not sympathetic all the time. Because immediately you want to lead with sympathy, and you're crying. Well, then I'm going to cry because that's sad. It's like, you're crying and I know why, and it's okay. Right. So, that takes a little bit of preparation. When I see a client, I make sure that I'm grounded. I make sure that I don't have anything going on currently. And if I do, I need to resolve it and not bring what I have going on to a session. And because then there's transference, right? So ultimately, that's what will happen with a client. Their transference hits me, or a negative space or whatever's going on. My transference will connect them and disrupt their performance, their session. So, but as being an empath, as being, are there times that I have clients that are so into it that sometimes it gets me, my eyes will well up on occasion. I have to, it's strong, it's heavy stuff. And I feel for them, and I want to hug them and just tell them it's going to be okay, or how proud I am that they're putting forth the effort and experiencing all these emotions and not giving up on themselves. But that's not my job, and that's not going to help them in that instance. They need to experience, go through what they're going through, because, that's just like something happens and immediately you just get a hug and it's relief. Like, as a kid, sure, but I feel like you need to kind of experience them. As I tell my clients all the time, like, you got to get uncomfortable if you want to be comfortable. Getting uncomfortable now will cause you to be comfortable. Like, uncomfortability for an hour can cause a lot more comfortability when you're alone and don't know, what do I do? I don't have anything to do, and you just go like, yeah, and I have me. So it takes a long time, I think, for some people, or maybe some people not, to get to that place of acceptance and being okay with you. So yeah, so I just stay grounded. I use my intuition to kind of, just like when we had our session, and I just watch. I get a sense of what they're talking about. Sometimes they'll tell me what they want to work on, sometimes not. Sometimes I can locate where they're feeling pain, where they're stuck, where they seem to be, or sometimes I might ask, and I just go from there. I mean, I don't wing it. I don't guess. I just kind of, whatever my intuition tells me, I go for it. And, could I be off sometimes? Sure. But 9 times out of 10, people go like, how do you do that? And I don't know, man. Like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't, I can just see you. I can just see you differently. I can feel you. I just see what's going on. I sense what's happening, So, and if I'm wrong, I'm usually in the right ballpark. I just get the, you know what I mean? So, I don't know. I just genuinely try to show up for people and remain grounded, and not, again, with transference, not take on their trauma, but allow a safe place for them to process it.
Yeah, yeah, and I can testify to that because Shane and I did a session together, and it was, first of all, it was awesome. Second of all, like, I had no idea what to expect, and I'd never been taught breathing that way before. It was almost like I'd been taught different versions of that, but like the way that you had put it together for me, I'm not sure if because I was trying to focus on the technique, it gave my brain like something to focus on, and then like emotionally everything came out. But I don't want to give anything away, but there was like one part where, can I say this when you allowed me to? Okay. So there's one part where Shane said, I want you to cover your mouth. Like, he had prepped me with something, and I had something in my mind. And he said, I want you to cover your mouth, and whatever, like, I want you to yell at the top of your lungs, like whatever needs to come out, or whatever you need to fight against right now, or stand up for yourself, like whatever it is. And so I covered my mouth, and I screamed on the top of my lungs. It was something that was sitting with me since I was 27, so over 10 years. And it felt like really good to yell, and it felt really good to take my power, and it felt really good to tell that person what to do, and I can see where if I continue to do that work, if I were someone who didn't have a lot of inner power and had not worked on that, because a lot of what you were talking about, like, and this is the thing, like, I love 12-step programs. I spent time in my own 12-step program when I was in Overeaters Anonymous for years. And I learned a lot of what you probably learned too. So we're on the same page there. But what I found was that I got way too spiritual. And so my outer power connection was like, I was like up in the clouds, I was like gone. And I didn't have much grounding in my mental, emotional, and physical inner power. And so what I loved about the breath work is that, especially physically, like for me to be an Overeaters Anonymous, what that really means is like, I did not have a relationship with my body at all. Yes, I had a problem with food, but my body image and my relationship with my body, like I was walking around as just a head. And so what was really cool personally for me was that it brought me back into my body. And I never really had a solution for that before. Like, you can talk in a therapy session and you can kind of talk about body image or whatever it is. But I was like, and I've done yoga before, and I've been kind of connected, but this was the first modality that I tried that like really forced me to stay in my body and feel my body as I was processing trauma. And that is so cool. And that if I have any clients or anybody in my coaching community who is struggling with trying to find a modality for like connecting with the physical body, but also have a component of emotional, mental, spiritual, in sort of like the container of trauma, like this is such a powerful tool in order to do that. And if there are people out there, Shane, that want to work with you and want to understand breath work and use it for themselves to heal, I know you do virtual sessions as well. You don't necessarily have to be in LA, because we did ours virtually. How would people get a hold of you?
So I have my Instagram is not a blocked account. It's Shane SHANE _ and my last name is VITKOVICH. I have my website is still being, due to the play and all that stuff, everything kind of got put on hold. My groups, a lot of stuff got put on hold because I had to put so much energy into that. But my website hopefully will be up soon. But if you follow me on Instagram, the link will be on there. My email is at theheathenhealer.com. And you can email me anytime, and then, talk to me privately. And from there, have a phone conversation or whatever, have a Skype like this. And, if it's something someone's into or something someone wants to give a shot, then I'm more than happy. Like I said, I'm not the only person that does this. I didn't invent breath work, but it's like, you can teach everybody in the world how to do breath work, and, some could be good at it, some not. So like, I don't care how many people do it. I don't, I see so many people like get mad at this, and this one took clients, and I'm like, I don't care, man. Like, I do what I do. And like, if you find someone that you jive with better, then that's cool. But I know what place I'm coming from when I do what I do, and that's all I can do,
Yeah. And I can testify to that. Like, it's about your intuitive flow. You've tapped into your intuition. You've had it your entire life. You didn't know what it was. You fought against it. And here you are embracing it. And you're using it to help other people and to heal yourself at the same time. And there's nothing better than that. And I applaud you for that, for all the hard work that you did. I'm like one of your biggest cheerleaders. I've always rooted for you. and I will always root for you. And it was my pleasure to have you on today and to have you share your transformation, your personal story. And I'm just blessed to have you here with me today, and to find out that we really are so connected, even though we've been kind of dancing with ourselves. So I love that. Now we can dance together.
Been this has been a year in the making, just trying to make this happen, so hey, I appreciate your time, and anybody who watches this, and like I said, I'm more than happy to speak to people, or even depending on where they live, if I know people that do breath work in your state, I can send you to them. Also, there are people that I do recommend. It's not a high list, but they are out there, and so yeah, I appreciate it. Anything I can do to get the story out there, to let people know, even if I just give somebody hope, somebody that goes like, like I know that feeling of suicide, of just not worth it. There's no way it's going to get better, and it's like it can't. But you got to do work. You have to do work. Nobody's going to come knock on my door and go, hey man, just want to offer you like all this money and just a life of happiness inside, and I'm going to touch you right here and things are going to be great. Like, that's not going to happen. And I kind of thought that was for a long time. Like, someone's just going to come tell me someday that have this, have that, life's great. That's not just so. Yeah, but it's been great. I appreciate it. Thank you for this.
Absolutely. And I want to thank our viewers. What a special episode this was, wasn't it? I mean, seriously, like, Shane is absolutely incredible. Like he was saying, like, if this only gives you hope, if you're struggling with something right now, I mean, everything that Shane has accomplished is just so incredible. And the trust that he had in himself, I know it might not always have been, to the highest level, but it was there. That fighting spirit was always there. That intuition was always there. So it's so important for us to nurture and strengthen that intuition, because it leads us to our purpose. And when we find our purpose, we find our life, we find our meaning for everything, and we are able to help others the way that we've always wanted to. So that's it for us, guys. Thanks again. And Shane, mwah, adore you.
So the play's going really well.
I saw your post. I don't know when you did it, but I saw one today that you said something like, I'm in the paper and it's not because I'm in jail. What are you drinking?
Kombucha.
Oh, I thought it was Robitussin.
Well, yeah.
I was going to say, this is like, PG show. You are certified, yes, for breath work?
I am.
Is the limelight getting to you?
No. Yeah, of course I'm certified.
Okay.
Can I use this during this or no?
Absolutely not. Do you have to?
No.
Okay. Such a rat. Get it out of your system now.
I am.